My name is Andreas Kirsten. I'm a law clerk for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces and a fellow with the Arctic Summer College. My presentation is on what can be called the Arctic Digital Divide. The Arctic's unique climate and position on the Earth is what draws us to study it, but these aspects, particularly its harsh climate and remoteness, also drastically hamper development, including in terms of telecommunications. Telecommunications infrastructure in the Arctic lags far behind that of more southern regions. This is essentially the Arctic digital divide. For example, household internet speeds in the Canadian territories, the areas with Arctic regions, lag meaningfully behind the national average in megabits per second. These slow speeds are shown to be additionally concerning given the ever-increasing average web page size. An internet speed imbalance can also be seen between Alaska and the U.S. Arctic and the national average there. Now, on top of speed, costs for equal or inferior connections are also much higher in the Arctic. The comparison of costs for equivalent speeds between Nunavut and the Canadian provinces shows this here on this slide. Northern consumers also face data cap restrictions where they have to pay extra if they use more than a certain amount of data. The internet and other telecommunications capabilities are integral parts of modern life. They are even more important in the Arctic where teleservices, like for health and education, are needed given the lack of personnel and the lack of services present there. Overall, the digital divide holds back Arctic safety, health, business, and overall quality of life. Now, the Arctic digital divide is mainly about economics. It's tough to cover costs and make a profit up north because the climate and demographics raise maintenance, transport, construction, and personnel costs. There is also only a small population and consumer base to recover costs from, so it costs more and there's less revenue and profit resulting from it. Currently, satellites provide almost all connections up north, but they have key limitations. They have high latency, which means slow connections because of the distance the signal has to travel, and they have slow data transmission rates in terms of what can pass through them. They rely on line-of-sight transmission that can be interrupted, and their signals are impacted by atmospheric conditions. Here we have an example of satellite communications in the north, and you can see the long distances and poor angles that the satellite signals must travel to reach the Arctic, and the additional atmosphere depth that the signal has to traverse. A possible answer to the digital divide is fiber optics. These cables already handle over 95% of international communications, and they can travel over land or undersea, and they essentially transmit data through pulses and patterns of light. Now, the advantages of these cables are several over satellites. They have low latency and have higher transmission rates. They don't rely on line of sight transmission, and they're not affected by atmospheric conditions. But these systems are not cheap, and the economic disadvantages of the Arctic listed earlier apply here just as well. A possible solution is to treat the Arctic as a tangential market along a cable path. Cables connecting larger markets could pass through and have their costs mostly covered by urban consumers, while Arctic residents still get connectivity. And I'll show several examples of this. The first is the Arctic Fiber Project. It's currently in development, but it will connect Japan and the UK, but also Arctic communities as it passes through. Urban consumers in Asia are footing most of the bill for the main cable, while Arctic consumers merely need to cover their small branches off of the main cable, as you can see here on the map. Another example is a cable through central Alaska built by ConocoPhillips. The company wanted a better connection for oil projects, so it built the cable. Then it decided it didn't want to manage the system because it's an energy company, not a communications company. Telecom companies took over and are expanding the connections to communities along the path, and they didn't have to pay for the main cable, so this makes it much more efficient for the consumers who are going to get those services. So ultimately, the digital divide is real and has real negative impacts for Arctic communities, but fiber optics can be an answer. By making Arctic markets tangential to larger ones for these cables, they can help bridge the digital divide. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.